I thought I was being watched. I was wrong. I was already part of the system. Frank didn't ask questions. That's why I called him. Some people need context before they act. Some people need emotion to understand what matters. Frank needed neither. Tell me what you know, he said. No hesitation. No curiosity. Just instruction. So I told him. Not everything. Just the parts that mattered. The warehouse. The man. The pattern. The policy. And then the one detail that changed everything. My name. Attached to something I never touched. There was silence on the line. Not confusion. Processing. You can tell the difference if you listen carefully. Confusion sounds scattered. Processing sounds still. Then Frank spoke again. You're not looking at theft. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Another short pause. You're looking at preparation. That word landed differently. Preparation. Not someone taking something. Someone building something. I leaned back in the driver's seat. Eyes still on B14 across the street. Preparation for what? Frank didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, when was the policy last updated? 3 months ago. And before that, nothing. It was dormant. Good, he said quietly. That means the change matters. I looked down at my hands. Still, steady. But something inside me had started to shift. What else changed in your life 3 months ago? Frank continued. I thought about it. Routine. Work. Health. Travel. Nothing obvious. Nothing dramatic. Nothing, I said. Then that's your answer, Frank replied. I frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does, he said. If the change didn't come from you, it came from outside. A pause. And that means it wasn't reactive. I looked back at the unit, at the door that gave nothing away. It was planned. Frank didn't respond. He didn't need to, because the moment that thought formed, everything else started rearranging itself around it. The payments, the timing, the repeated access, the location. None of it pointed to impulse. None of it pointed to emotion. It pointed to structure. Ethan, Frank said, voice lower now. Let me ask you something. Go ahead. If someone wanted access to everything you are, your identity, your assets, your decisions, what's the one thing they would need? I didn't answer right away, because the question wasn't simple. It sounded simple, but it wasn't. What? I finally said. Proof. Frank replied. Not who you are now, but control over what happens if you're not. That hit differently, because suddenly, this wasn't about money anymore. This was about outcome. If someone controls that, Frank continued, they don't need to steal from you. A beat. They replace you. Silence. Real silence this time. Not processing. Not thinking. Understanding. I looked at the steering wheel, then back at B14. They're not just moving money, I said quietly. No. Frank replied. They're building a position, and I'm in the middle of it. Another pause. Then, you're not in the middle. I frowned. What do you mean? You're the center, he said. That landed heavier than anything else. Because there's a difference. Being in the middle means you're involved. Being at the center means everything connects to you. I exhaled slowly. So what do I do? Frank didn't hesitate. You don't confront them. I wasn't planning to. Good, he said. Because the moment they know you've seen it, they shut it down. And then, you lose visibility. I nodded slightly. That part I already understood. What's the move then? There was no pause this time. You let it continue. That went against instinct. Every instinct. You want me to just watch? I asked. No, Frank said. I want you to stay inside it. A beat. And start shaping it. I looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. Explain. If they're building something around you, he said, then right now, they're assuming you're predictable. I didn't respond, because he was right. Routine, behavior, patterns, everything about me was already mapped. And if they think you're predictable, Frank continued, then they're not watching for change. That's when it clicked. Not fully, but enough. So we don't stop them. I said slowly. No, we guide them. Frank didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. Because the moment that idea formed, it felt right. Dangerous, but right. I looked at B14 again. Sam adore. Sam silence. Same illusion of nothing happening behind it. But now I knew better. Because whatever Laura thought she was building, it wasn't finished yet. And unfinished systems can still be changed. If they were building a version of me, then the only question that mattered now was this. What happens when that version stops behaving the way they expect? I didn't make a big move. That would have been a mistake. Big moves get noticed. And the moment you get noticed inside a system like that, you lose the only advantage you have, being invisible. So I started small, small enough to pass, small enough to blend, small enough to matter later. That night, after Laura went to sleep, I stayed up, not in the living room, not anywhere she would expect. In the office, door closed, lights low, laptop open. The policy account was still active, still accessible, still exactly where it had always been. Which meant one thing. They didn't think I was looking. That gave me room. I logged in slowly, not rushing, not clicking around randomly. Because systems don't just track actions, they track behavior. Speed, sequence, pattern. If I moved differently, someone, somewhere, would notice. So I didn't explore. I followed. I went straight to the activity log. Same entries, same updates, same quiet, controlled changes. But this time I wasn't reading them. I was mapping them. Timestamps, access points, intervals. And then I saw it again. The gap. There was always a delay between when something was updated and when it was finalized. Not long, but consistent. 40 minutes. I stared at that number longer than anything else on the screen, because delay means process, and process means vulnerability. I leaned back slightly and said it out loud. That's where they move, not at the beginning, not at the end. In between, that's where systems are weakest. That's where decisions haven't locked yet. That's where something small can change everything. I leaned forward again, hands steady now, and I made my first move. Not the beneficiary. Too obvious. Not the coverage. Too risky. Something smaller. The verification chain. Every major change had to pass through a confirmation step. A simple one. Easy to overlook. A phone number. I hovered over it for a second. Because this was the line. Not the point of no return, but the point where I stopped being passive. Then I changed it. Just one digit. Then another. Until it wasn't mine anymore. It was Frank's. I saved it, closed the tab, logged out, and then I waited. Because systems don't react immediately. They react when they're triggered. And I had just moved the trigger. The next day I acted normal. Sam routine. Sam question. Same distance. Laura didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't show it. That told me something important. I was still invisible. Good. Because now I could go deeper. Day 2. Nothing happened. Day 3. Still quiet. And that's when doubt starts creeping in. Not because you think you're wrong, but because nothing moves. And when nothing moves, you start questioning whether there was ever a system at all. But I didn't stop. Because I knew better now. Systems don't disappear. They wait. And on the 4th night, it happened. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Late. Too late for anything normal. I stared at the screen for a second. Because this was it. The first reaction. The first ripple. I answered. Didn't speak. A voice came through. Calm. Professional. Controlled. Mr. Carter, this is regarding your policy. We just need to confirm a recent adjustment. There it was. Not random. Not accidental. Triggered. I leaned back slowly. Eyes on the ceiling. Because now I knew 2 things at once. They had moved. And they didn't know I had already changed the path. Go ahead, I said. Voice steady. Neutral. Can you confirm your identity? The voice asked. I almost smiled. Because that question was never about identity. It was about access. I glanced at my phone. A message from Frank had already come in. Don't confirm. Stall. So I did. What's the adjustment regarding? I asked. A pause. Small, but real. That wasn't part of their script. Just a standard update, sir. Standard. That word again. He let the second pass. Then said, then you shouldn't need verification before explaining it. Silence. Longer this time. Because now, I wasn't inside their flow anymore. I had broken it. I'll need to call you back. The voice said. Click. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. And felt it. Not relief. Not fear. Control. Because for the first time since this started, they didn't know where I was in the system. And that meant one thing. They were about to look. And when people start looking for something they thought they already controlled, they make mistakes. And I was counting on it. They didn't call back. Not that night. Not the next morning. And that silence told me more than any answer could have. Because systems don't go quiet when everything is fine. They go quiet when something doesn't line up. I didn't change anything else. Didn't log in again. Didn't touch the account. Because the moment you interfere twice, you stop being a variable and start being a signal. So I waited, watched, stayed inside the same rhythm they thought they understood. Laura woke up at the same time, moved through the house the same way, said the same small things people say when nothing is wrong. But something had changed. Not in what she did, in how she did it. She checked her phone more often. Not casually, not habitually, purposefully. She wasn't scrolling. She was waiting. That told me everything. The system had reacted, and now it was pushing back. At breakfast, she didn't ask about my day, didn't mention dinner, didn't even pretend to maintain the same script she had been following before. She was adjusting, and when someone like Laura adjusts, it's not emotional. It's strategic. You'll be home tonight? She asked. First time she had asked anything like that in days. I looked up slowly, met her eyes. Why? Just one word. Enough to shift the balance slightly. She held my gaze for a second longer than usual, then shrugged. Just asking. But it wasn't just asking. It was probing, timing, presence, control. I nodded. Yeah. Simple. Predictable. Exactly what she expected. She looked away first. And that was new. Because Laura didn't look away unless she needed to. That's when I knew. She had felt it. Not what I did, but the effect of it. Something in the system had changed, and she didn't know where it came from. Good. Because uncertainty forces movement, and movement creates mistakes. That afternoon, she went to B14 again. Same time, same pattern, but this time, she stayed longer. Not by much. 10 minutes, maybe 15, but enough to matter. Because when a system is clean, time doesn't change. And this time, it had. I stayed across the street, watching, not following, because I wasn't tracking her anymore. I was tracking the disruption. When she came out, she didn't walk straight to her car. She paused, just slightly, looked down the street, not directly at me, not obviously, but scanning. That was the first real crack. Laura didn't scan unless something was off. And something was. The man arrived later than usual. Not by hours, not by anything dramatic, but late. 3 minutes. That's all it took. 3 minutes to confirm what I already knew. The system wasn't aligned anymore. And now, they were trying to fix it. That night, my phone buzzed again. Different number. I answered. Mr. Carter, we just need to finalize a pending confirmation. Not verify. Finalize. That was new. That meant they had already moved forward once. And something had stopped them. Me. I leaned back. Let a second pass. Go ahead, I said. We just need to confirm your identity before proceeding. Sama script. Different urgency. I glanced at my phone. Another message from Frank. They're pushing harder. Good. Because pressure reveals structure. What exactly are we confirming? I asked. A pause. Longer this time. Because now, they weren't just off script. They were behind. Just a routine update, sir. Routine. Again. I let out a small breath. Then said, then send it to my secondary contact. Silence. Complete. Because that wasn't supposed to happen. That's not necessary, the voice said quickly. Too quickly. And there it was. The first real break. Control slipping. It is now. I replied calmly. Another pause. Then, click. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly and smiled, not because I had won, but because now I knew something for certain. They weren't just building something anymore. They were trying to rush it, and rushed systems make visible mistakes. I stood up, walked to the window, looked out into the dark, because now it was time to stop reacting